Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming this evening and kind of sharing this volunteered roundtable with us. I'm Christian Jones. I'll be your moderator for this evening. I want to first introduce everybody on our call. So we can pull up the next slide and kind of go over that. So first up, we have the pool actually filling in for Pinkage for the First Lego League Explore in Maryland. And then we have Jamie for First Lego League Challenge in Maryland, Caitlin Olnitsky, the Assistant Director of Virginia DC First Lego League, which also includes the Challenge and Explore, so formerly FLL and FLL Junior. Sarah Gagnon, and I'm sorry I'm butchering that, the Assistant Director of Volunteer and Community Engagement at First Chesapeake. And then also Jenny Beatty is going to be joining us as well. And she's the First Chesapeake Volunteer Manager for Maryland and Metro DC, and is a longtime member of the Maryland First Lego League Planning Committee. So first up, we'll go over the housekeeping rules real quick. And then we'll take all your questions to the chat at any time. We'll address all of those questions at the end of the presentations. So first up, we have the pool, and he'll go over the Explore program in Maryland.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm sitting in for Pankaj. He got called to a work obligation kind of at the last minute, so I apologize for the last minute change. But I'll try and give you an up-to-date picture on what's happening with FLL Explore in Maryland. So some of you may know that the organization that was delivering the program in Maryland, they decided to discontinue, and so Rockville Robotics stepped in to fill the void because we didn't want kids to miss out on any opportunities. And so we're kind of new at program delivery. The organization really has been an FTC 501c3, mostly operating in Montgomery County, Maryland. But as part of our development of FTC teams and FLL teams, especially our FTC teams, they actually did quite a bit in engaging and organizing festivals for FLL Explore. So our coaches actually do have some experience with the FLL Explore program. The key information for our volunteers, if anybody who's looking to volunteer, we would invite you to visit our website. It's on this page. But the most useful thing you can do is actually, even if you're half thinking about volunteering, either virtually or in person, should there be an in-person event, please just send us your information at the email, the info@flexploremd.org. It'd be great to have you in our database. As an organization, Rockville Robotics is 3 years old. We're young as far as most first organizations go, but Pankaj, who's going to be the program delivery partner, that's the individual who makes all the decisions and has to stay up late at night. He's been involved in FIRST programs for 8 years. He's been an FLL coach and FTC coach to several teams. And he's had a pretty big impact in Maryland for different kinds of FLL and FTC programs, and so many people are familiar with him. And likewise in Virginia, I hope you'll get to meet him. He's a fun guy. He really loves FIRST programs. He's very enthusiastic and very much about the kids. So what have we been doing? We took over in September, and we're mostly going through our training. We're getting started. We think our website's going to be ready by the end of the month. The information about the season, we're waiting to hear about what the season is looking like. But our initial thoughts are that events, likely starting with virtual events, will start at the end of January, and we're really hoping, if situations make it possible, to have a few in-person events towards the end of the season. And that's, of course, all depending upon the global situation and the local situation and FIRST guidelines. But likely the kinds of things that we're considering doing would be outdoors and in small formats, probably lower key than we normally would in a regular year. We're really looking forward to working with volunteers, getting suggestions from volunteers on how to make these events enjoyable, challenging, and worthwhile experiences for the participants. So if you have any suggestions or you have any past experiences, please send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, if you have any questions, we'll take them towards the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Up next, we have Jamie.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us in such a late evening and dedicating your time to this. In terms of Maryland, we have been meeting and discussing a lot of great ideas, and we are going to continue to put forth and optimize such a great season to ensure that the students are going to get all the opportunities in the world. Part of my committee is here today, and I'll introduce them. Damian Doyle, who is our chair of our committee, and also like myself, an employee of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We also have Dave Barron, who is here, who is our head judge, as well as Richard Blorstead, who is our head state referee. So if you have any questions regarding that type of area, they are here to help ensure to be able to answer your questions. In Maryland, first and foremost, we are playing a season. We have decided to keep it all virtual to be equitable to our entire state. We have situations where they can meet in person, and we have situations where they cannot meet in person. So we decided that we're going to keep everything all virtual. And with that being said, we've decided to push a lot of this into the springtime. We will not have any qualifiers in the fall whatsoever. More information will be delivered on that as we are perfecting those things, very similar to what Virginia has. Actually, no, it's great what Virginia has there. In addition, we are almost in a way siloing a little bit of some of our judging, and Dave can kind of talk about that as well in regards to the robotic competition versus the judging competition. We haven't solidified everything quite yet, but that is on its way as the committee is actively meeting. We are trying to also host a coaches/volunteer meetings starting in the late October season. Our registration is not going to close for some time to give an opportunity for school systems to be able to figure out where are they in terms of their season, and also their school system if they can even participate. We hope to essentially provide opportunities where students are going to be able to deliver their research through video, utilizing a lot of the resources we have at the university, as well as later on be able to demonstrate their robotics and their engineering type of skills later in the season. But again, none of this is going to be in person, but we are looking for volunteers who are going to serve in more of a couple hour time frame. So a lot of our seasons, we will have kind of qualifiers, but they're going to be a little bit different. And we don't want to overbear and exhaust our volunteers in terms of online. So what we're going to be doing is a model that they will be able to kind of on their own asynchronously watch videos and be able to judge them on that sort of capacity. So there's a lot of opportunity. Again, all these things we're currently working out through our committee and our meetings. So if you're interested, you're welcome to email this particular address. We will add you to our list, and we will also disseminate your information according to what you're interested in. We do have a website that does have a volunteer form that will also go to the appropriate people. Dave and Damian and Rich, have I covered everything at this point?
Yeah, I think you got it all.
Perfect. Okay.
Awesome. So next up, we have Caitlin Olnitsky with Virginia DC First LEGO League and Challenge and Explore.
And next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Caitlin Olnitsky with Virginia DC First LEGO League. So right now we've decided for our First Lego League Challenge program, our competition, our competitive program, that we normally run November, December, and because of the state that schools across our state and region are facing, we did have to push that back. So we plan to hold our regional tournaments at the end of January into February. And I'll talk about the format in just a minute, but I know that that means that a lot of things will overlap with other programs. I will talk about registration, but I do expect our capacities to be lower. So if you normally volunteered with all of our programs, you might see some overlap this year. With our Explore, formerly FLL Junior, we're still going to be running it February to May. That's what we've traditionally done. We will be announcing dates in November. And for those of you who haven't heard, First has decided to move the championship event back to the summer. We, as the other programs could speak on, we really don't have much information on what that will look like yet, but that is part of our timeline. Next slide, please. So with our competition program, FL Challenge, we will be doing no fully in-person events, just with the way that things are looking right now with health and safety guidelines. We will 100% be offering remote events, the virtual events as Jamie talked about, but we're still considering a hybrid format where teams might be able to come and do their robot game in person. There's a lot of challenges presented in that, but we've been asked by some of our community to at least see what the possibilities are. So we'll 100% be able to offer remote events, but we're still looking into maybe a possible hybrid scenario. We also want to make sure that we are being equitable when we set up maybe some remote hubs. We know that not all teams will have the ability to film in certain locations, so we want to make sure that we reach out to our community in terms of that as well. Like I said, remote events will be happening regardless, so teams that have traveling restrictions will absolutely still be able to participate. With our Explore program, FL Junior, we're still looking at the possibility of in-person events, but we'll definitely be able to offer remote. As FLL Explore in Maryland had mentioned, we're looking at some things maybe outside in the spring when it gets nicer. Same with Challenge, we're looking at maybe some more scrimmage events, possibilities as well later on. Next slide, please. So right now, I've been meeting, I talk all the time with our regional planning team, many of who you know, Steve Scher, Karen Berger, and Scott Rakestraw. Karen is our data crunching awesome genius, and registration right now is open but low, so we will be expecting lower tournament and festival capacities this season to reflect those numbers. We have been putting in a lot of work to try to help teams navigate the season. If you haven't checked out our newly refreshed site at va-dcfll.org, we're trying to update resources for teams that can meet in person and teams that cannot meet. So please be directing some of the people in your community to that resource as well. As of last week, we've been able to connect with the majority of our tournament leadership. Most of those leaders do feel comfortable with running remote events, and very few are actually able to even reserve tournament sites right now. Most of the sites don't have a conflict with FTC and FRC because we know that we have a really great ecosystem and we want to try to protect that in all this. But the sites that do have conflict or maybe want to try to get their FTC or FRC teams working more with our events, we're working with those that are looking for that connection. We will have access to a remote event platform that First is working on in October. And in Virginia and DC, we're expecting to train our key volunteer leadership in about the November timeframe to prepare for January. Next slide. So at this time, especially because I know we have a really great volunteer community out there, we are looking for more ways to engage FTC and FRC teams with our Challenge and Explore programs. We're not going to be able to get together the same way we have in the past. So I just want to make sure that if you have ideas, please reach out to us at questions@va-dcfll.org. We want to keep our communities connected, and though we might not be able to meet in person, I'm sure that there's some other really great ways that we can get those teams sharing their work and what they're doing and set up some great mentorships. We do plan to have all of our events finalized by November for both programs. And at this point, volunteers will be able to start signing up. Many of you out there in the volunteer community, you know your tournament directors though, so we've already had discussions with them. Please feel free to reach out if you do have questions. They can pass them on to us. But they're in the game and they're ready to go. So please consider still joining us. We're going to need judges, reviewers. We're going to need refs and announcers and other important tournament roles, maybe some roles that we didn't even know that we needed before in this new world. So please stay engaged with us. We send us any questions or feedback at our question site, and you can follow us on our social media. And please check out our new website. And that's all I have, Christian.
Thanks, Caitlin. Now we're going to switch to Sarah with First Chesapeake.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Gagnon. I'm the Assistant Director of Volunteer and Community Engagement here at First Chesapeake. On the line, we also have Ron Therian, who is the Program Manager. And also on my team, who is not here tonight, is Jenny Beatty, who is the Volunteer Manager for the DC Metro and Maryland area. So that's the team that we're working with. Next slide, Matt, please. So what is the plan for events? And we do cover First Chesapeake, if I didn't say before, is First Tech Challenge and First Robotics Competition, so FTC and FRC respectively. We are shifting the FTC season. You're starting to see a trend here to mid-January 2021. I believe Caitlin said it earlier too. We are aware, we are so very thankful for our volunteers, and we are aware that we do share a lot of volunteers across the program. And so we know that this can be challenging when we all shift our season together. So we are working together, and we just want everyone to know how much we appreciate you guys. And we know that you might have to decide which location you're at, and we understand that going into the season. We are looking at hybrid events, especially in FTC. We know that judging will be remote, which means it will be virtual, and we will be using different software to enable teams and judges to connect. But we are looking to have robot matches at a venue, and we will talk a little bit more about the venues in a second. Is not to be surprised if you have been on any of, we have been doing these town halls over the last couple of months with teams that we are looking to lease commercial space. We will not be holding events in schools for pretty obvious reasons at this point, but we are looking to lease commercial space to try and keep everyone safe. The teams will be rotating through the venues in between, with time in between for cleaning. And again, we can talk in more detail about what that looks like later in the question and answer section if you haven't been in one of the previous town halls. We are exploring different options to add shields to the field. Now that we've seen the game, everybody's seen the FTC game reveals been out. We are looking to add some separators and shields on the field to make sure we're keeping safe. And we are limiting the number of people in the building at a time. Matt, next slide, please. We keep saying it, and we're going to keep saying it, and you're going to keep hearing it, but our health and safety is our top priority of our volunteers and teams. We are doing everything we can to keep the fun and excitement of the season, but also make sure that we're keeping everyone safe. The great thing about this plan is that it does allow for flexibility and scalability of events. So we can scale up or down the number of teams at an event based on the current guidelines, CDC and local guidelines in the areas. Not surprisingly, First has put out a modified consent and release form, and I believe First Chesapeake is also. I know that we have had teams reach out asking for similar help with defining that, because COVID is new for all of us, so there is a COVID clause added in. So it's good to be aware of that when you're signing up to volunteer. Also, for on-site volunteers and teams, we just want to make you aware, because this is the #1 question. So we did a survey back in July for teams and volunteers, asking what people's concerns were with volunteering. And it became pretty clear in the survey that one of the top concerns was what are we going to do on site to keep people safe? So let's share that information. We're going to be doing pre-screening. It will be a questionnaire and a temperature check for everybody entering into the location. Mask and safety glasses are required for everybody, volunteers, teams, mentors, anybody who walks in the building. Social distancing will be practiced between teams, and hand sanitizer and wipes will be provided for cleaning and just to keep everyone safe in multiple locations, outside of restrooms and everywhere we need to have them. We will be making sure teams and volunteers follow all safety policies, and it will definitely be a rule that will need to be followed. And if teams, if an entire team will be asked to leave and can potentially be disqualified from the event for not following it. I will tell you, this was the #1 question that I got from volunteers is, how are we going to make sure that people are following the rules we put in place? Next slide, Matt. Okay. So we've seen this slide a few times. This is a busy slide. It's as Ron calls it, it's an eye chart, but it's important to see. This is Ron did a lot of really great work to figure out how and where sites would be. So when you look at this map here, this is a map of our FTC and FRC. No, it's FT. It's just FTC, sorry. FTC teams. Each one of those dots represents a team. And then he did 100-mile radius circles to determine. So you can see the dot here that says 200, there's 200 teams up there near Baltimore. So there will be, that site is USRA. So there are 200 teams within a 100-mile radius of USRA. Then if you look, there's one over there by Harrisonburg, one further down in Southwest Virginia, and then right there south of Richmond. So we are looking to have 4 remote sites at these 4 locations. And these, we do know USRA will be the site for the northern route, but for the other ones, we are still, our logistics manager, Glenn Davis, and Ron and Leanne are working to, diligently to find these spaces that we can use that are big enough and safe enough for us to bring teams in for these competitions. I think that's everything on the dots. Ron, do you want to share anything on that, or are we good?
No, I think you covered everything.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next. Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
So volunteer roles. So a couple of things we're doing in the volunteer field. We do still need volunteers. Yes, it will be remote. And yes, we will be doing judging remote and some other roles, but we will still need our referees. We will still need all of our volunteers. So don't give up on us yet. The majority of the roles are going to be virtual or remote, and we will be providing training and more information as we flesh out what these look like and we get information from headquarters. We are looking at some new roles. So there's kind of some new ones to consider. We're looking at commentators with other sports that are running online, right? So it's going to be a mixture between game announcers, MC, how to get the excitement in the stream that we get from a live event. So if that's your calling and you're that person, hey, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. We also know that we're going to need to have an on-site venue manager. This is a person who's going to have to be there on site to troubleshoot. We are looking at some different scenarios. How often do we need to switch out the venue manager to ensure the safety of volunteers and teams? And as we work that out, we'll be sharing more information. Obviously, we're going to need tech support. We have Matt Glennon, who is running this call, does a fantastic job with tech, but he is not going to be able to run all the tech support for all of events at one time when judges can't get into the system or teams can't get into the system. And so we will need some tech savvy people to help get people connected on days of events. And then virtual mentoring. This opens up a new opportunity. So if you've always thought mentoring might be for you, however, you haven't been able to commit to the time it might take to walk in, this might be a great time for you to dip your toe in the water as a virtual mentor and not have to spend as much time. So if you're interested in that, we would also love to hear from you. We are expecting volunteer registration to open in the October-November timeframe. Again, we are somewhat dependent on headquarters to get this information set up and out there, and we are working to define roles, but that is our best guess at the moment when we will see that. Next slide. So in volunteer engagement, we love our volunteers. We want to keep you guys involved. We want to keep the energy high. The last thing we want to do is chase off our volunteers based on this. And so we're doing some different things to keep everyone involved. One of which is Volunteer Connect, which is the newly minted volunteer newsletter. If for some reason you haven't gotten it, I believe we're going to put the link if you want to sign up into the chat so that you can sign up to get the volunteer newsletter. It will come out every other month and it'll have information for volunteers. We are also conducting roundtables. I'm a firm believer, and most of us here, all of us at First Chesapeake, I should say, agree that we know we don't have all the answers. And we know that the community out there has good suggestions. And so we're holding roundtables within key volunteers and roles. So within judge advisors, within referees, within volunteer coordinators. So we're holding roundtable at events with smaller groups so we can hear people's ideas. We can talk through ideas and strategies. And we do believe that we'll come up with a better plan by going through this process. We have just started this process, but if you are interested in participating in one, please reach out to me. My contact information, volunteer at First Chesapeake, is below. Vote for the volunteer this season. So there's also a link if you want to. It is a different season this year. And so we have 2 possible choices. We would love everybody's opinion on if you want to vote for volunteer here, volunteer there. I will volunteer anywhere. Our connection is strong. This will be on t-shirts. And yes, we are looking to mail t-shirts out to our volunteers for the FTC season, our remote volunteers. Social media posts. If you don't know how to follow us, you can find out on the website. And we're always looking for ideas. So if you have an idea of something fun to do or something you think we should be doing differently as a volunteer, I am all ears. I would love to hear from you. Again, that email's that volunteer@firstchesapeake.org. And that is everything I have. So I'm going to turn it back over to Christian so that we can look at the questions and answers.
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. So we actually have a few coming in, the first of which I'd like to direct to both Caitlin and Jamie. So doesn't matter who goes first, but they're asking if somebody can explain how remote robotics competitions are done for First LEGO League.
Richard, if you want to step in at any point, feel free. But right now for remote competitions, the plan would be to have teams submit 3 videotaped runs, and they will be releasing information about how to do that, what angles, timestamps, what the refs want to see. They're asking that those videos be taken all within 1 day, so you're not just trying to pull for your best run. They're also asking that you have someone, some kind of official, some kind of non-biased third party, maybe an FRC member or a principal, sign off. Again, some of those guidance suggestions are coming out now, but then the referees would be watching those on the other end and scoring them. I know one thing that our head ref, Steve Scher, has been advocating for is for teams to actually send in a practice round video beforehand, so that way refs can give them some feedback. One of the things, we know that robot judging is not ideal, but we really still want refs to be able to interact with the teams. And so we're looking at setting up a time frame in which teams would be able to turn that score in. A lot of, with FL, a lot of guidance come down from that, but I don't know, Richard, if there's anything else you wanted to add to it.
Sure, thanks, Caitlin. So I did briefly look over the remote events guide on the First Inspires website, and it has some details about what angles to look for with your camera and how the video quality needs to be in order to pass it along to the referees to look at. I echo what Steve Scher says. It's really helpful if the team can submit a video to the referees to look at ahead of time. That gives the referee a chance to A, see what the team is going to do, but also B, see if the team is maybe doing something they shouldn't be doing that could disqualify their entire run. That way that the referee might have the time to review that and then send the information back to you before you complete the 3 official challenge matches that, like Caitlin said, should be done all in the same day. And First will post more guidelines about how to timestamp everything and how to make sure everything comes off completely good and exactly what they need so that we can sign off on the score sheet and submit that to the qualifier or the regional tournament.
Jamie, do you have anything to add?
But that Richard said it all perfectly, so that's why I have him here.
Perfect.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next one then. So the next one we have is, Caitlin, I think you wanted to kind of address this one. We have 5 DC First LEGO League Challenge teams, and they're looking for an FRC mentor. Is there a pool or resource that they can tap into?
So I think I know who this is coming from. Hi, Capital City Robotics. I definitely want to say that First has put out something new this year called the First Mentor Network. What they're trying to do is connect mentors in the field with teams. So if that person wanted to send us an email, actually, I'll probably just reach out to them. But there is a better way, or they're trying to make a better way to match mentors. And one thing that we are looking to do, and I'd love to work with First Chesapeake more, is get some of the FRC team mentorship going on. So that was one of the ideas that we did have, was looking for FRC teams that want to still work with teams right now, because it is a lot more difficult, but getting those people connected. So I will definitely connect with Capital City Robotics, but I encourage everybody to check out the First Mentor Network, because it's kind of like a matching system for teams looking for help and people who have expertise.
I'd just like to add to that where that is, because it's in a weird place in your dashboard. If you go to your dashboard, you have to go into the volunteer tab, and it's actually under volunteer. And it's if you wanted somebody to volunteer, the team that wants volunteers has to sign in there and put that in, and then you'll get matched with people that say they want to volunteer with you. But it is in a strange place.
All the fun. Awesome. Well, thanks, Ron and Caitlin. We'll go straight on to the next question, if that's okay with y'all. The next one is, what type of troubleshooting do you anticipate for venue managers? And is this a technical or non-technical position? So I think, Sarah, you may be a good resource for this one.
So we are definitely, the venue manager role, the troubleshooting role will need to be technical, because a lot of it will involve camera angles and getting in to the system and making sure. Now, that does not mean that we won't have some non-technical roles as we move forward and figure out exactly what the venue managers are going to look like. But right now we are anticipating that being a more technical role, that they can help troubleshoot with robots and connections on the field. And they will be working with those who are remote on AV issues or streaming issues also. Does that help?
I think so.
If it didn't, ask another question. Sorry.
Yep, not a problem. The next one we have on the list is training for judges. I'm not entirely sure if that's geared toward First LEGO League or FTC and FRC. So just to cover our basis, if we don't mind, just going through all the programs and just kind of going over what that looks like for the 2020 and 2021 season.
For FLL, I'll defer to Dave. There he is.
Sure. For FLL in Maryland this year, we'll be doing all of our judge training virtually as well. We're currently planning to have a few different sessions that will be running at different times of day and times of the week to try to capture the times that our volunteers are available. We know that everybody's schedule is very different than it was 8 or 9 months ago. And we'll also be looking at ways we can record that type of information so that it's accessible offline as well.
So in Virginia and DC, First LEGO League will be running a similar plan. We plan to train our head judge advisors in November once we have access to the platform. And then from there, we want to get them involved with training their volunteers. But again, we'll be offering virtual training at several different times. We see that happening starting in December into January, having a longer training period to make sure people have the time to take care of that. And I know that First is also working on more consolidated judging videos. That's another new change for FLL, at least FLL Challenge is consolidated judging in Virginia. So our head judge, Scott Rakestraw, will be making sure that everybody over the next couple of months feels comfortable with that as well.
And for FTC and FRC, we are aware that judging is taking on, with being remote, that there will be a level of training that is required just to learn whatever system we will be using to connect with teams. So there will be some level of training just on how to use the system. And then the traditional training, which is, how to ask the right questions, how to judge, what are their awards, that type of stuff will be done by the JAs. We're exploring different options. Again, much like everyone else, trying to find what fits best for our volunteers and their schedule without being too demanding, to make sure that everybody's comfortable by the time we get to the event. So we're exploring different options also.
Well, thank y'all. Kind of along the same lines, we have a question about the minimum age for judges. They're thinking of their FRC team members volunteering to be a judge for First LEGO League, and I'm assuming First LEGO League Explorer as well. So thoughts on that?
So
go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Okay, sure. So for First LEGO League, for FLL Challenge in Maryland, we usually ask that our judge volunteers, be at least high school juniors. And the reason for that is we really like to have a little bit of age stratification in between the students that are being judged and the judging panel that's reviewing them. We try to make an emphasis that it's not peer group mentorship from the judging perspective. And then typically for championship events, we do raise the threshold a little bit higher, and we look for college or above for our judging panels.
One thing we want to check into, and I don't know if this came out from First, is that I believe we may only be able to take 18 years old and above as of this year. That's only new information that may have come out, but we'll be checking into that. Maybe some of my colleagues can verify that. But that's for this season, I believe. And others can maybe, I don't know if that came out yet.
I don't know if it's come out. I know it was announced 18, and with the first remote event hub portal, we will be able to gain access. But that is a question that we've kind of lobbed back to them to see, because especially a lot of our Explore events as well are really hosted and promoted by those FRC team members. So we're searching for more guidance on that exactly, Jamie, just to make sure that they are able to get into that remote event platform.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up is that I just didn't want them to hesitate to start signing up and then them get denied. So I know that that communication isn't quite clear yet, but just be aware they are deciding that they may keep it only 18 and above for this year.
The other thing is the remote hub is there to stay. So if they don't do it in the remote hub, it'll be 18 forever. It's not just, the remote hub's not just for this year, it's permanent.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all. The next few questions are going to be directed specifically towards FTC. So the first one is there a list of Title II or under-resourced FTC teams that need mentorship? And where can they find that if there is one?
All right, Ron.
Yeah. Actually, there is not a list that we have that's out there. I mean, we're actually, and part of that just because we're just like everybody else, we're struggling with registrations and who's going to register. Most all of the Title I schools that we have are all virtual at the moment. And we're trying to work through working different programs with them specifically to keep the kids engaged while they're at home with the intention of bringing them back in January. But so, yeah, there isn't a list. If somebody asks for one, I'll try to connect a team to them. Obviously, in the virtual world, it's a little easier to connect people from anywhere, but there is, at this point, there is not a list.
Who should they reach out to if they want that list?
You can reach out to any of us at First Chesapeake and we'll connect you, but Ron is usual, right, Ron?
Yeah, it's basically me. If they want to connect to a team, just let me know.
Okay.
Yeah. And he'll help.
Perfect. And I think the last question as of right now anyway, so if there's a few more questions, let us know, but this is the last one we have. For FTC, do we still anticipate in-person, virtual, or hybrid inspections?
You want me to take that one again, Sarah?
I don't think we have an answer on that quite.
We don't have a total answer. It will not be in person. They won't be in-person ones.
Correct.
But whether right now what they have is they have the inspection sheet that the inspectors normally would do. It's a self-inspection sheet. And so the teams are on their honor to inspect their robot according to the sheet and go that route. But we have actually thought about just to get a bunch of the inspectors involved in it is we could do virtual ones and just do a camera on it. So you could, they could go through their inspection sheet and do some kind of hybrid version. So yeah, hybrid is definitely an option in there, but that's the technology we have to work out. And a lot of the things we want to do at events, like we're going to stream all our events via Twitch. We're talking about doing a virtual stands thing where teams actually join, and we're going to put screens out so the teams that are there can see their teammates in the stands projected on there. So all these things take a lot of bandwidth, and that's where we have to work through all that stuff. So it's going to take a little bit of time before we can figure all that stuff out. But
we are aware that there's some learning opportunity in the inspections. And so our inspection managers, we're hoping to have a roundtable with inspectors that we mentioned before to see what ideas are out there. Because we do know that there is, somebody mentioned it earlier with refereeing, that we know there's a learning. We don't want somebody to be disqualified because of something that they could have possibly learned in advance.
Right.
So the next question I think is actually going to apply to all of our programs. They're asking if there's any resources available to help teams that may not have access to fast internet for virtual events or high quality video editing.
So one thing that's become really important to us in Virginia and DC that we're looking into is trying to locate, especially if we do go all remote, a few what we're calling hubs in a way, excuse me, whether they be organizations or different places that wouldn't mind allowing a team to come in to film their robot game and help them get it uploaded and things like that. We're also looking at maybe having, trying to connect people in the community with equipment if they need it. And then when we do release our guidelines on what these videos should look like, we'll also be including some resources to free online editing equipment. Again, we know that they won't necessarily be the highest quality videos, but we're looking at a bunch of different options because we know that we have some teams that will have issues with internet and resources as well. So we're looking at identifying places within the community to help connect them and get them those resources.
And then just to add to that, about video editing, at least from the referee standpoint for First Lego League, if I see a video that's highly edited, it's going to throw a bunch of red flags up in the air. Like, what did they do that video had to be edited so much? And I'm not sure how Dave feels about that from the judging perspective, but I'd rather have an unedited raw video. I think I guess the issue that comes to mind is really what the video format, like the file format that gets submitted is, and how do teams make sure that they have their video in that format?
Yeah, I agree with Rich on that statement. For the judging piece as well, I think it's actually going to be a point of emphasis that we'll cover when we get into judge training this year. On the video editing side, like we really want to focus in on the content that's being delivered and what demonstrates what the students have done, as opposed to the polish or finished product on the production value of the video itself.
We have a few more then. I'm going to direct this question to Ron. So what is the impact of first announcements today, virtual FRC events until further notice, on planning for hybrid FRC events?
Okay, it's a loaded question, but it's actually a good lead-in. And I think the link is out in the chat out there. We're having a town hall to actually talk about this on Tuesday, next Tuesday night. And you tune in then, and then you can listen in on it. I mean, we're actually planning on still having some level of hybrid events and having some level of interaction between teams. So all I can say is tune in then.
Tell your friends.
And Matt just put the link back out on the chat for you.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. I'm actually going to go back to kind of the virtual formatting. We had somebody ask for recommendations for MP4 format or unlisted and YT. So do y'all have any recommendations for them?
Are they asking?
My bad. No, that was totally my fault. So that's
all good. Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, are they asking what format?
I think the recommendation is for MP4 format.
Yes.
Yes.
I would
for
agree
FLO.
with that. Yes.
Yep.
It'll be for everybody, right? Because
we're really,
programs has got stuff to submit. So
awesome.
And I will say, at least at the Maryland FLO, I mean, one thing that we're going to utilize is a lot of the resources again at our university that the students will be able to upload. And we all kind of have these more of these portals and connections that are readily available. And we also understand the challenges that are in each of our different areas, our districts and our counties. So understand that we're not going to, everybody's going to remain equitable. And I like what Dave and Richard said, which is that we want to make sure that you're going to be true and full of integrity. So anything that you submit to us that's going to be very fancy, maybe a little questionable, and maybe you do that with your research project, and that's fine. But the truth is, we're going to stick to our rubrics versus it being about how it's actually taped. If that makes sense, or videoed. Sorry, I used that old school word, tape. But yeah, videoed. Because the truth we're trying to get is what was actually done versus the media portion of itself. That is not a aspect that you should be worrying about when it comes to judging how quality your video is, if that makes sense at all. Mm-hmm. What we want to focus on is the content and also the richness of what the students have done.
And I would add to that too. In these practice rounds, I feel like if one of our referees was to notice that maybe they didn't have the equipment they needed, that would give us time to help make sure the team got connected with what they needed. And so giving a little bit of room to be able to look at some of those videos first, I know in our region will be really helpful, because we don't want the teams to feel caught off guard. We want to support them. We're all just trying to get through this. And so whatever guidance we can provide, that will be our goal in the end.
Okay. So I'm actually going to direct this one back to you, Caitlin and Jamie, and then anybody else who has any comments as well. So the video editing to present First Lego League Challenge project may demonstrate creativity of teams. Will that be considered in the judging process?
I'll probably also defer this back to Dave, because he can probably speak even better about it as he laughs at me. But the truth is that if the video itself is related to what they're doing and creatively, you know what I mean? Because some of our teams have used a video to present their research project in a creative way. That's one thing, but I don't feel if it's about how they're presenting, and if we're based upon the quality of the video itself, I mean, that is just something we just cannot allow to be a deterrent in how we judge. We have to try to keep things as unbiased as possible. Dave, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's totally accurate, Jamie. And the other thing I'd add to that too is we should still think about the judging from the perspective of so the judging panel is not going to be in the room with the team, but the requirement is still that the presentation has to be a live presentation. And so what does that imply? I think that does imply that the students are still doing most of the content delivery in real time, and there's not a lot of polish or effects being added beyond the 5 minutes of the video that they have to capture that.
Dave, we also have that question of, will parents be allowed and others be allowed to remotely watch the competitions? That's actually for us, Ron. So,
and I will say this right now, First is working really hard to make sure, because right now we're about to throw, a bunch of kids' images online, and we have to be very careful legally with how that happens. So we will be getting guidance on what we can, what we're able to put out there in terms of the content that teams turn into us, because we know that robot games would have normally been public. So we are working and talking and making those suggestions to First. And that's something that's definitely on their agenda when they're looking at this. So we're trying to make sure that we give parents and other people a glimpse into this competition, but we do it in a way that also protects our participants as well. So it's definitely on our radar. We just, figuring it out.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all. That seems to be all the questions that we have for today. So I want to thank everybody on this call for taking time and just coming together and answering these questions that for the community. And then thank you everyone who showed up, participated, and asked some questions. If there are any more questions that you think of after this town hall meeting, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll be happy to answer the best of our ability. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a great evening.